recovery supports for businesses of all sizes. Deputy Mayor Bailao, we'll start with you. Over to you.
Thank you. So one of the first initiatives that we had was definitely the tax deferral program. It is intended to help people with cash flow issues. I think all of us, all municipalities would like to do more, but as you probably all have heard in the news very much lately, we're all also asking the provincial and federal government to come to the table to help us better serve and better assist our residents during COVID-19. So the tax deferral was something that was put forward within the first few days. Shortly after we addressed issues like parking situations, we're not charging for parking in a lot of our streets. We created a program called Curb TO, so that it helps create physical distancing while people are lining up to get into some of these businesses, or for pickup and curb pickup of issues of goods. We've also partnered with the Toronto Board of Trade to have a business center to support our small businesses. We have created an in-person as well that small businesses can call as well for support, and we provide support in all kinds of areas, from telling them the programs that are available for them provincially and federally and municipally, to advice as well. We have shifted some of the funds. So for example, one of the funds that we have very much available is the innovation fund. We had an innovation fund with our business improvement areas, so we shifted and made that more readily available for the BIAs and the small business to take advantage of that. And then a very, very successful campaign that we worked with our small business was the Shopkeeper Campaign, which actually we are connecting small businesses so that we can create their presence online and people can order and buy their goods from these small businesses online. Within the first day, we had over 3,000 businesses and almost 400 web developers that came together. And through this partnership, we've been able to help thousands and thousands of businesses. And just as late as yesterday, obviously, we have unveiled a big part of our active TO program, which is a program that is going to roll out within the next few weeks. It's bike lanes on main streets, and it will have not only the bike lanes, but a lot of infrastructure to support pedestrian safety, physical distancing, and the opportunity for the small business to thrive. One of the things that we understand is that we need to create the environment for people to safely move around and to support our local business. So it is crucial that we create the pedestrian space, the cycling infrastructure, the public transportation in a way that people feel comfortable in going in it, and then that we are able to somehow control the car traffic, because we can't just expect that if everybody decides then to get on the cars, that we're not going to go very far. We're just going to be stuck in traffic. So that's why we're trying to create these different modes of transportation so people can come to our main streets while maintaining physical distancing, being able to support our small business in a way that people feel comfortable in.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bailao. Appreciate the perspective from Toronto. Now we'll turn to Councillor Fonseca for the City of Mississauga. Councillor Fonseca, over to you. Same question.
Thank you so much, James. Boa noite a todos. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you. The City of Mississauga, we too have looked for ways to respond as quickly as possible to local businesses, maybe small business and or medium or larger industrial commercial businesses. We have also deferred commercial taxes for 90 days and waived fees until the end of the year for businesses. We also also passed a motion to defer the municipal accommodation tax for 90 days, which we heard from certain sectors of business in the hospitality sector, especially, that this was extremely important. We've also worked with, through the region of Peel, to defer water bill fees for 90 days. We're a two-tier in the city of Mississauga, along with city of Brampton and town of Paladin. So utilities comes through the region. Also, we deferred the stormwater charge for 90 days, which was, we heard from businesses, was a significant impact for them. So we have deferred that for them. We've waived fines, penalties, and any sort of late fees for business licenses, which we've also heard from businesses has been very important in helping support them. And also providing free access to all of our MyWay transit services throughout the city, whether that be local or our express routes. We, through our economic development offices, we have responded directly to hundreds and hundreds of businesses, business owners, and landlords as well. And through that, we have created also a dedicated web page and portal, business portal, to keep businesses up to date and to connect them to the supports that will be most beneficial for them, whether coming from the city order of government, regional order of government, provincial or federal. It is really important. One thing we've heard from the business community is that we're all working together, all orders of government, to ensure that the local business engine of the economy will continue to be able to prepare for this reopening and recovery stage that we're moving into right now. Through the portal, we've offered and are continuing to offer a number of free webinars for the businesses, and different incentives for the businesses as we're moving into a reopening and recovery phase. We also have a business advisory program that we've set up, which is actually free for businesses, and it's an opportunity for a one-on-one support for businesses, so they could be matched with a lawyer, a business consultant, other experts in our city, and depending on what it is, what issues they may be facing, they can do a consultation, a specific consultation directed to what their needs are. On top of that, we have and hosted by the mayor a number of roundtables to engage different sectors of the business community, including business associations, our Mississauga Board of Trade, our BIAs, small business, retail, and hospitality. And these roundtables really provide an opportunity to hear what the firsthand challenges are. On top of that, and following up on that, we have heard from them one thing that they are really seeing inspiration in is the mayor has set up with economic development a campaign around good news stories. So as the businesses, as we have shown that we are finding ways to that we can support best the business community, they are also showing ways that they are giving back. So through these good news stories, we are celebrating and how businesses, local businesses, yes, they need supports, but they are also supporting supporting their neighborhood communities depending on where they are. Similar to the city of Toronto, and we've had the discussion both locally at the city of Mississauga and at the region of Peel, in that we create open streets or main streets through working with the BIAs on a active transportation plan that will open for pedestrians and cyclists more of an opportunity to access in their local communities main streets, whether that be at one point cafes, curbside pickup, or just enjoying active transportation routes within their communities. And the other thing that we are working on right now that we have heard a great deal of appreciation and support of from local businesses is that typically for Canada Day, we do throughout the locations, main streets in our city of Mississauga, whether it be right in our downtown core at Celebration Square or in Streetsville or down at the lake. We do Canada Day parades and Canada Day celebrations, Malton as well included. And the business community plays such an important role in supporting these events. So we're doing a virtual Canada Day this year, and it will provide an opportunity for the local businesses on these main streets to do little video presentations, interviews with residents in their neighborhoods, and local businesses that are on their main street, so we can continue to celebrate their main street. So we're doing a virtual Canada Day and what that means virtually, and also promote their business. Little video.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor. Appreciate the insights from
the city of Mississauga. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Councillor. Thank you for that. And now we'll turn to the City of Brampton. So, Councillor Medeiros, same question to you. What is the City of Brampton doing by way of relief for businesses of all kinds? Over to you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. First, I'd like to thank the Federation for putting on such an important event, and it's always a pleasure to be here with my colleagues from all over the province of Ontario. And it's really an opportunity for us to share best practices on, I sit here listening to my colleagues who just spoke, and certainly there's some interesting measures which are implemented that certainly at the City of Brampton that we would be interested. I will say at the City of Brampton, we've been very active, and to a certain degree, we've been showing a lot of resolve and leadership in terms of the way that we reacted to supporting our business community. I'd like to recognize my colleague who's also Portuguese Canadian, Councillor Paul Vicente, who's led a lot of the work regarding our economic support task force. The Mayor Brown, Patrick Brown, he issued mayor's task force to deal with economic development and supporting our businesses. And that was important to get Brampton Board of Trade, our BIA, our partners all together to work on how we can support the business community. The first thing that we noticed was with all the announcements that was coming from the federal government and from the provincial government, there was a maze of information and programs. So what we did is we provided one-on-one business support in terms of accessing and navigating through the web of programs and services. And I can tell you for the Portuguese community specifically, a lot of Portuguese businesses that contacted me certainly really benefited from the support that we provide, almost a concierge service to help them navigate and even help them fulfill some of the applications in terms of getting access to some of the funds. And I know when we talk about the Portuguese community, we talk about our economic development on Main Street, which the Portuguese community is very much a part of. Many of these businesses are more family-run businesses and don't have that capacity to be able to address a lot of these sort of procedures and requirements from the government. The City of Brampton, another thing which we as a council, really early in the days where a lot of municipalities, and I say this respectfully, announced 3-month deferrals. We went beyond. We did a 5-month deferral, and it really shows with the state of affairs today that I think we're accurate in terms of providing a 5-month deferral, understanding that this wasn't a short-term measure, that it would have to be something more meaningful. And I can tell you that the City of Brampton, notwithstanding the 5-month deferral, we will go beyond and look at other means, understanding that from what we're seeing in terms of the numbers, and unfortunately, this might go longer than what we expected. Notwithstanding, as suggested by my colleagues, the virtual seminars, we also, as my colleague Councillor Fonseca, when we talk about a municipal tier system, we also belong to the Region Appeal. And this year, for the first year, City of Brampton was to introduce a stormwater tax, but we also deferred it, and thus that would be at the region. I would just say, lastly, more importantly, is our collaboration with our Brampton Board of Trade and our BIA in terms of providing supports, developing a sort of a long-term plan, looking how we can help businesses transition into looking at technology, because we know, again, we recognize very early in this stage that this was going to be more prolonged. So any type of short-term support or measure would really have to be more developed in a longer term. And so we've been working with a lot of these businesses to help them transition into that, looking at technology, providing them platforms in which we can support that. But just lastly, I will say that the resiliency of our Portuguese community here in terms of the businesses, and we talk about the establishments of, your bakeries, your cafes, your auto mechanic shops, your construction entrepreneurs, your landscaping, all these folks, I can tell you, they've been resilient. A lot of their employees are Portuguese, and the city of Brampton, we take very great pride in we translate all our documents into all the languages, including Portuguese. So we've really paid a lot of attention into investing into communication, ensuring that these Portuguese businesses feel that they're supported, feel that they get the proper language translation, understanding what exists there, and we've guided them through the process. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done at the City of Brampton.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Great perspective from Brampton. Thank you for that. And lastly, we'll turn to His Worship Mayor Nelson Santos, the Mayor of Kingsville. Same question to you, sir. What is your municipality doing to support businesses through this unprecedented time?
There we go. There we go.
There you go.
All right. Boa tarde a todos, meus amigos. It's an honor to be here and join you as one of the speakers to speak about our collective efforts to not only recognize our value of on our main streets, but the critical support that Main Street businesses do provide for us in any part of Ontario. The critical support that our businesses need now as part of any reopening is really dependent upon a response from both our citizens, our municipalities, and certainly the business associations that are in play. And we recognize that if we're going to kind of recover in any form from the pandemic at this point. So a collaborative effort is certainly above and beyond, I think, all parts of our protocols. At the regional level, again, we'll speak here at Municipality of Kingsville. We are a lower tier level, and we also serve as part of the upper tier County of Essex. So here at the regional level, we've already made some responses in terms of communicating what steps that we can take for responding, restarting, and recovery. For example, through our Tourism Windsor Essex Pelee Island channels, we've already identified some messaging and marketing that are going to be key to support the extended staycation recovery period that we're going to be identifying with the habits of our residents. And similar to the municipalities that have spoken and our representatives, our municipality, our Kingsville, has already deferred our tax levies, both in property tax, our water and wastewater uses. We've actually deferred those twice now. Again, that'll be under review as we continue to step through these times. In Kingsville, we were actually in a full-fledged business retention and expansion study where our dialogue with over 120 businesses was already in play pre-pandemic. So trying to shift and not allowing, I guess, this program to kind of fall off the rails. Our task force, when we saw it, we kind of opted, like in basketball, to kind of pivot and find another route to ensure that now we're able to respond not only to what we were seeing pre-pandemic, but now what is the critical response? What route can we take to and manage through certainly the challenge that the pandemic has brought with business closures for the interim that weren't non-essential? How are the businesses doing? That is something that we currently have underway, and part of our study that we were initially going through identified Kingsville has a balanced business community, and it's a healthy mix of established and newer businesses. It speaks to our longevity and the entrepreneurship that we have, that we so incredibly value across our small urban centers. When I look at our tourism and economic development 2020, our plan, it's a completely different outlook in May than it was in January. We've seen, like many other communities, miss so many cancellations of our staple festivals, our Highland Games in Kingsville, our folk music festival that's coming in the summer. All those, the talks of Celebrating Canada Day virtually, that's something we're studying and looking at as well to introduce. But that tradition of luring 8 to 10 to 15,000 visitors through our downtown every weekend. It's definitely changed, and it's going to take even more of our local flavor with our folks choosing to avoid the large centers like Windsor and Detroit for us. And we're already seeing, surveys and studies back that they're going to be looking at local spending, local shopping, and that's not going to be unique to us. It's going to be something we feel will be shared across our communities as they try to step out from COVID-19 and the risks associated with that. So for us, Kingsville, we're looking at now redirecting our tourism funds to that kind of shop local initiative. We're working with our community partners on this campaign. We're going to use those dollars for informational messaging, how to be safe, how to approach businesses, supporting businesses at their announcements as part of the reopening and recovery timeline. We want to be able to advertise and promote the business community as they open to help lessen the expenses they will be trying to take on at this time in the recovery. So immediately on our agenda, Kingsville's response is going to look at prioritizing our digital marketing capacity. Have that, building out that capacity for us is a big part for some of our small businesses, supporting the downtown, the uptown, and our tourism sector. Those are all key pieces for us. Tonight, actually, just down the street, our Kingsville BIA is hosting a special meeting to also talk about a response. They're going to go through some brainstorming plans for their reopening of the core. And as we have a number of our municipal representatives from our council that are attending and listening, they'll be bringing that back to our table. On the table for considerations, we're also bringing to our Kingsville Tourism and Economic Development Committee opportunity for those outdoor food halls within municipal properties. We're talking out loud and outside of a traditional business approach with the ability to expand their businesses from inside their four walls to outside into the streets for open air markets, for which we're hoping to facilitate, again, the social distancing and still encouraging patrons to support their local businesses. Today's Tuesday, so we've been coining that as Takeout Tuesday for us. It's been a kind of a moniker, and it's something that we're going to try to carry through the next phase or the next stage going through it. Again, we recognize many of the businesses, they've been closed for much of the pandemic, and we're very sensitive to those costs that they're usually attached to. So any permits for road closures, the sidewalk cafes that we traditionally do, the rentals for parking lot spaces, all of those, we're looking at waiving them as a critical position for our municipality to give that sense of relief. This is something for the balance of the year, again, trying to provide that space for some of our small business owners, trying to provide the capacity for restaurants who may be limited to 30% or 40% usage indoors. So again, trying to work with our groups to make this a reality is again, outside of tradition. It will certainly be an eye-opener for us, and there's a lot of considerations to take. But again, each of us, we have to be willing to do that. We have to be looking at those new and creative approaches. It's part of our recovery. Our businesses have been so impacted through these times that they're challenging us now to help break the new ground and certainly create an unconventional recovery plan that will help us see us through. So stay tuned. There's still a lot happening here.
Thank you very much, Mayor Santos. Appreciate that perspective from Kingsville as well. Thank you for that. We have questions starting to trickle in from our audience and from online, so we'll get to those in a moment. And before we do that, though, as the moderator, I have the privilege of asking my own question first. So let's start. I'll pick up a thread that Councillor Medeiros dropped around the tashkas and the cafes and the coffee shops that are the essence of so much of the Portuguese community. Thinking particularly about my own little Portugal and the riding of Davenport, represented by Councillor Bailao here in Toronto. In many ways, the essence of the community and business is small businesses, as you've all said, small mom and pop businesses who work very hard to build up their cafe, their bakery, their tashka, etc. We often hear, though, that government programs are hard to access for these smaller businesses that don't necessarily have fleets of lawyers and government relations consultants to help work through the barriers to getting that support. Can you, maybe we'll start with Councillor Medeiros, since you mentioned the bakeries in particular. Can you maybe walk through how a bakery owner in your municipality would be able to access the business supports you put forward?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I think obviously we all recognize that many of these establishments are family run, family owned. You know, I can tell you from the experience in Brampton for those who've reached out to me. So one is a communication sharing, not understanding all the programs that exist out there. So for example, the federal government has a targeted wage subsidy. Essentially what that is it allows for some supports to businesses to pay their employees to make up the difference of what they cannot pay because of what they're suffering through, I guess, this situation. And I can tell you one of the struggles that I hear out there. So the bakeries, many of them, or other sort of small businesses have come forward and are accessing and will access. One of the big issues that we're having right now is rent relief. So the federal government makes an announcement, which is a very good announcement in conjunction with the province. But then I get a lot of small Portuguese businesses contact me saying that the landlords don't want to adhere to that program. And right now, there's no teeth in it. So essentially what that means is we have a great program that federal government will cover 75%. Essentially, someone who is renting, so a lot of these small businesses can pay 25%. We at the City of Brampton are working with these businesses to help them navigate through the paperwork, help them fill out the required forms to after here a landlord or in many cases a large property management company who don't want to support these businesses. And then what, you know, the situation that I find myself in is running to my MP and MPPs, trying to raise awareness to them. And that's been a challenge. So right now, you know, one is I'm acting as a champion for these small Portuguese businesses, understanding the way that they're made up, understanding their clientele. Second is trying to help them in terms of, you know, we just had the mayor of Kingsville rightfully talked about Takeout Tuesday. So look at ways in which we can help promote their business at the City of Brampton in terms of not only promotion, in terms of helping them set up what are some of the requirements, because even walking through the guidelines in terms of the PPEs they require, in terms of, you know, how many people they're allowed in at once. So that's a little bit of a challenge. And then when you talk about, for example, landscaping companies, a little bit more construction companies, those type of things, there's a lot of confusion in terms of the type of work that they can do or not do. So I can tell you from Brampton's experience, one of the number one sort of service we provided is just really providing crystallized information on what you can and can't do, and in terms of where do you find that information. In terms of some of this relief that's out there, targeted wage subsidy, rent relief, you know, that's a struggle right now for businesses to access. But just lastly, I can tell you, Portuguese businesses contacted me actually today, and one of the struggles they have is they have a lot of senior workers who are afraid of COVID. They're at home receiving rightfully from the federal government, I think around $2,000 as part of their COVID unemployment. And you know, what they pay is very similar, and this is a small business. So for them to come back, there's no incentive to bring these folks back. And the small business owner doesn't want to let these people go, but is in a situation where he doesn't have workers. And at the same time, for him to bring workers on, he would have a challenge with what he has now. So right now is it's a very confusing system out there. And the one thing I could tell you, the number one service that we're providing, which I would say in with Portuguese businesses, is the communication and almost trying to hold their hand through this process and guide them through this, because it is a really tough process, and it's frustrating, notwithstanding all the other supports that we provide. But I will tell you, you know, the federal government, provincial government, and I do appreciate that these are challenging times. I do appreciate they've provided some really good support, but it's a struggle for many of our businesses, notwithstanding when you talk about, for example, some of the landscaping and construction businesses that relied on temporary foreign workers, understanding that there's no travel from places like Portugal and places, you know, it's a little bit of a challenge for many of these businesses. And so I've heard, you know, they're very unique stories. And but ultimately, you know, one thing that we've heard loud and clear when we talk about these Portuguese businesses, these are the same businesses that supported the community when it gets to cultural events and so on and so on. And it's a real shame that they're in this situation But I would say, going forward, we're looking at ways that the municipality, in terms of how can we support a lot of these sort of ethnic businesses per se, and it's a challenge. It's a very difficult challenge. But I would, say our number one challenge right now is in terms of communication, navigating them through the system.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe we'll turn to the Toronto perspective. Councillor Bailao, how could a bakery on Dundas access the various municipal support programs that the City of Toronto has put forward? Over to you, Councillor.
Thanks, James. I just want to echo something that Martin mentioned, which is I think that all municipalities have been playing the role of actually championing the issues of the small businesses. I echo also, and I hear from many of our businesses about the rent relief. I think it's the toughest situation out there. I think all of us are hearing it, and I think because municipal politicians are so close to the people, we hear about these issues day in and day out. I mean, I think my colleagues do too. I'm in regular contact with my provincial and federal counterpart, and they hear about the issues as well. So I think all of us have been playing that role of championing that with our BIAs and with individual businesses as well. One of the things that we're looking at to help a lot of the food industry, so bakeries, restaurants, all of these, is really the opportunity to create spaces where they can spill into the street. I think that we have an opportunity, at least for the next few months with good weather, and we're hoping to be launching a program very soon to actually allow for people to come to these main streets, and maybe the bakery can't have the capacity of having everybody inside, but once we have the provincial order to start serving on these on site, that we are ready to take advantage of that, and that we can give them more space so they can have the physical distance and create beautiful, great patios at no expense for them, and take advantage of the good weather. I think we would all appreciate it, and I'm sure that all these small businesses would really, really appreciate anybody in the food business and restaurant businesses. I think it's really important. I have to say that some for the businesses in Davenport, I think some of our local businesses have been quite incredible and doing, I think, well, and have been it's been really rewarding to see some of the actions they've been taking. I mean, I have the privilege of having Pavão and Nostal and all those, and you see the lineups of all of those in there. But I have to say that not only are they serving people and keeping all the rules and protocols, and I think that, again, all municipalities had to put these business centers to help people, to give the assistance, to go through the rules, and to give out legal and accounting and all these services to these businesses so they can learn this new reality of COVID-19. But some of the small businesses also go above and beyond and give back to the community. And some of these small businesses, like I was mentioning, Unostal, for example, he had a call out for anybody that needed food to go in there. So we actually had members of our community donating, prepaying for them, so that people could go there and also pick up food. So I think there's a mixture of things that are happening in the neighborhood. This week at council as well, we are actually approving something that was already in the works, but I think it becomes that much more relevant, which is actually creating a subclass for music venues. And in the area that I represent, and here in Little Portugal, there's a lot of businesses that are small music venues, and they're gonna have a really, really tough time, because I mean, if we don't even know when a restaurant can open, we for sure have no idea. I don't think anybody has any clue when some of these small music venues are going to be able to open. So we're actually approving at council a subclass tax for music venues, very much in line of what we've done with other areas in the creative sector. So this would be a reduced tax for landlords that have these music venues in them. So these are some of the things that we're looking at, working on, and that we're hoping that will help small businesses to recover and to get them through these next few months.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, we'll hear from Mayor Santos. Mayor Santos, how can a small business access these supports in Kingsville?
Yeah, and similar to Councillor Medeiros and Deputy Mayor Bailao, the challenge is certainly sometimes it's in the translation from what is announced provincially, federally programs to how can we bring it to the ground level. And a lot of our communities and businesses that are leasing spaces in our small town in Kingsville, a lot of our properties are dual purpose. We would have like a level of residential above and the commercial on the main street. Some of the definitions we found have become a struggle for our small businesses, where they're in for example, a quad building where 3/4 of the building is actually residential and the main floor is strictly commercial. And if you go into the weeds of the legislation, only properties that are 30% above commercial or minimum 30% commercial would qualify. We have a large downtown facility that is 25% commercial. So right off the bat, they don't even qualify on the ground level to get access. So for those dozen businesses in that area, they are without, and that has created a little bit of a concern for them opening up and being able to manage through one, whether it's a renewal of their lease because they're right at the time of that, or they just signed a new lease period for 5 years and they were in the fourth month, and now they're struggling to find any kind of support because while the landlord was willing to look at it, which is refreshing, the fact that the property itself didn't qualify because of the percentage. So there's still dialogue going on there to find some hopefully some supports that way. Our continued conversations again with our provincial representatives, our federal representatives have been very good. We have, I think we've strengthened our relationship. It's been about finding a response to support the communities right now. And there has been a lot of transition and additional clarity that's come down through each ministry to help respond. And I think that's what we're grateful for. And in like small town Ontario is that there are some unique spaces that it's not just one size fits all. There is an opportunity to address the concerns and legitimately find a resolution for them. So some of our small businesses have been, fortunate to get into that. But again, there are gaps that we're identifying almost one by one to address. And our business community knows that they can reach out to our municipality and we'll help make connections, to them. We are a kind of go-to, exactly, we're closest to the people, the businesses, and we're more than willing to do our best to continue to not just champion their efforts, but to find answers and resolutions with support of our members of provincial parliament, especially down here, because it's pretty critical for the overall response.
Thank you. Councillor Fonseca, same question from Mississauga, please. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. I will echo as well what my colleagues have said with regards to we're finding a great deal of requests from the businesses to advocate on behalf of them for rent relief. And one of the ways that we have, we are open to working with them and to collaborate in every way possible that we can as a municipal order of government. But one of the things that we have done through COVID is to have so we have these roundtables with the businesses, the business community, and tourism community and events and festivals. And then we have set up and invited the MPPs and the MPs to roundtables. So we have how, from a Mississauga perspective, how we can advocate is directly to the MPs and the MPPs, and then ask that they take that back to their respective tables provincially and federally. That seems to be working out fairly well, and we've heard some good response from the business community on that end. One of the things with regards to touching on bakeries and cafes and Portuguese, specifically Portuguese businesses that are in either hospitality and or also groceries. I have 2 Portuguese grocery stores. That one's actually in my ward, helping them navigate. Again, there's navigating what supports or relief, financial relief is there for them as businesses. Whether it's at the federal or provincial or municipal or regional order of government. But then there's also having them navigate all the application process, as has already been explained. But at the same time, one of the ways that we can really advocate for these Main Street businesses, Portuguese businesses, is through the BIAs. We've lessons learned from, I think it was 7 years ago, we started a pilot on patio locations in our Port Credit BIA. So down at the lake, there's a number of Portuguese bakeries and restaurants down there that are represented, and we're able to give input into this pilot for a patio. For patios. And we have been able to, because we put that pilot in place and it went through a rigorous application and protocol as a pilot, we were able to take lessons learned from that and to be able to offer it now in other locations, not just down on the lake, but also in BIAs, for example, in Streetsville, which also has some stores that front on either restaurants and or bakeries, cafes. But not only that, also in some of our plazas, for example, in the ward I represent, I have a number of plazas that have not only Portuguese bakeries and restaurants, but also other, as Councillor Medeiros was pointing out, different ethnic shops to be able to drop in, and restaurants. And so we've been able to take to offer these small businesses in different languages, again, through one-on-one consultation, if piloting, not piloting, but if putting in place once reopening is phased in, would they be willing to look at doing this again to space out in terms of the recovery, who is allowed in their restaurants or who is allowed in the bakery, and different protocols without them having to pay any of the fees associated with that. So they wouldn't have to pay for any of the upfront fees for the patio permits. They wouldn't have to go through committee of adjustment for the parking variances, that type of thing. So that's one way for small businesses that are have a big impact within the community and that are also employing people in the community. Looking at that, one of the things that hasn't been touched on, but I'm hearing from the Portuguese community from a hospitality perspective, and we're working through this right now with our economic development department, and we're also bringing it forward and advocating to the MPPs and to the province. Is a lot of Portuguese own or lease banquet halls, and they do such an incredible job of providing just amazing hospitality through the banquet halls. So whether they own them or whether they are leasing, some of what has already been referred to, they've expressed great concern with getting rent relief and trying to enter into some sort of amended lease contracts or agreements where they can pay in a phased approach. But not only that, they have asked us, are there ways that they can work with us as a municipality and through tourism and or our events department to help support them in transforming in the short term of the recovery their banquet halls and still providing service, obviously, but in a adapted or a way to adapt to recovery through COVID. So that's something right now that we are working with.
Apologies, Councillor. I think we're having some trouble with your feed, but I think we got the gist of your answer. Thank you very much for that. That question sort of focuses on the expense reduction side of the business. Let's maybe turn to the other side of the equation, which is getting customers in the door. And as the economy slowly starts to open up, the multi-million-dollar question, of course, is at what pace will the economy start to pick back up again, and when will restrictions be lifted? All things we don't know, and all things we're waiting on with bated breath. But many municipalities all over the world are taking various steps to encourage customers to go into those businesses, even within the confines of the existing restrictions under which we're all living. For example, slow streets on main streets, extra parking areas in some neighborhoods, and extra walking areas in others to encourage that foot traffic. You've all kind of touched on these measures within your municipalities, but I wonder if you could highlight one in particular that you think is relevant to Main Street, to getting customers coming into those businesses within the framework of the current restrictions that we're living under. And maybe we'll start with Mayor Santos. Over to you.
Thank you, and certainly trying to get people to kind of feel comfortable again and moving out from the home and stay home initiative to getting back in the community. We've recognized through some of our initial surveys with our agencies there's a concern. But in terms of being able to communicate with our businesses and identifying that each one, if we can create a plan that identifies the social distancing that will help maintain, I think, alleviate some of those concerns that the residents are having as we look to open up again the potential for. So one example we're talking about is an outdoor food hall. So recognizing resident restaurants and then our businesses will not be able to do business as usual. How can we accommodate a space that the community is comfortable or feels safe in traditionally, and kind of allow for our business community to take advantage of that and spill over into that. So that's part of our initiative over the next coming days, actually, to identify proposals with our business improvement associations, with our chamber, to get some advice doing that. We want to make sure that we're engaged in this that makes one, it's safe, but two, it deals with trying to bring back some of the staff that have been laid off from the service industry. Restaurants are certainly a big part of our downtown core, along with the craft breweries we have in our community and the wineries. There are spaces that we can utilize collectively to bring everyone together versus trying to be competitive, and give them an opportunity to come back, at their pace and how comfortable they would feel. Again, we're just initiating it, and the dialogue needs to have further discussion for the safety and protocols. But certainly, municipality is going to I think open up the doors to do things very differently.
Thank you, Councillor Fonseca from Mississauga.
Yes, thank you. I think I got kicked off earlier, so I apologize for that with the internet. But yes, definitely. I was mentioning working through the BIAs. So we have our main downtown core at City Hall with Celebration Square, which is a significant open space. Working with city staff and different businesses as how we can, number one, have, again, an open market and or food when it comes to hospitality. Is there a way to bring food trucks and or some sort of food celebration to the square, building on what we already have? With regards to BIAs in different geographical locations in the city, again, working through with the businesses to address, and the BIAs, how can we best address and promote what they're doing so they're not hesitant. One of the things I hear, one of the concerns we here is that if they invest a certain amount into a reopening plan that does not succeed or is not adaptable into the next phase, they could potentially, again, that could be a detriment to their already tapped out resources. So working with them specifically on, through the BIAs, how can we address, again, having patios, some of our more open spaces that are public, whether it be in parkland or adjacent to some of our main streets. How can we accommodate pedestrian, the flow of the pedestrians or cyclists or individuals or that come into the businesses? How can we accommodate that to fit the criteria for accessing their businesses, while at the same time ensuring that the business itself is going to benefit? So I'll echo what was said previously by a number of others, but I think the main thing is that we don't assume anything from one individual business, that we encourage and promote and keep in touch with the businesses through communication channels and networks, and keep in tune with them as to what their needs are, and that will be the best way that we can respond and collaborate and work with them on this.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
We're down to our last 7 or so minutes, and I have one more quick question at the end of the broadcast. So I'll turn to Councillor Medeiros. If you could give a brief answer to the question about getting customers to Main Street shops within the current framework that we're living under in your municipality.
Thank you very much. I think, I appreciate the answers and the framework in which we're thinking about this. But, in my humble opinion, I think we're also framing the answer in a pre-COVID world. This idea that customers are going to come into shops as normal, and we're going to, we have a public health emergency happening. People don't feel comfortable going to Main Street. We can close Main Street. We can look at different ways, and people have more pedestrian, but that world is no longer sort of post-COVID. So what I think that what we're doing at the City of Brampton, and I think many municipalities are doing, but this idea that things are going back to normal, I would suggest that we're really pushing to fully adopt a technology transformation. Really, notwithstanding, before COVID, we were really in our downtown with our BIA, looking at building our innovation district in our downtown Brampton, but also looking at expansion of Brampton entrepreneur centers in terms of launching, growing the downtown innovatively and through technology. And that means arts, culture, and tourism. What we're doing, for example, when it comes to infrastructure projects, as one of the chair of plannings, and I know Councillor Bailao is also a chair of planning, we're really expediting our infrastructure projects and our planning applications. And I know that really has a large impact in the construction sector with the Portuguese community, especially in a lot of our entrepreneurs. But I think the essence of Main Street and how you bring residents back or bring people back to shops, I think the truth has to be said that this is not going to happen anytime soon. And, we really have to look at other platforms and support them in that transformation to be able to understand what does it mean to put their products online? What does it mean to have, move into that space and look how we use our main streets and look at those open spaces that we talked about.
Thank you, Councillor. And for the City of Toronto, Deputy Mayor Bailao, over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to try to be brief. I think there's something that we could really help all orders of government, and everybody could really help, is actually with messaging. I think that giving some clear message and direction to people in small businesses at this point in time where it's getting harder and harder, I think is really important. And I think we need all to concentrate on that. It is important to create customer confidence and to confidence in people to do to go outside, to open their businesses, and to do it responsibly. And that is, for that, it is essential that we have clear messaging going out and not, sometimes it's too soft. Sometimes we go in at 10 o'clock in the morning and one government is saying one thing. By the time there's 3 o'clock, municipal government is already saying a little bit different. I think that we really need to do a better job at that for everybody's sake, because we need to create that confidence out there. And the other thing is very much what Martin was saying is understand that this is going to be here for a long time. And I think that, we're all going to, even post-COVID, things are going to be a bit different because we've been living through this. We've adapted to different things. So I think that managing this crisis, while creating long-lasting, permanent changes and supports for these small businesses. That's why we put so much emphasis on that Shopkeeper campaign, where we had thousands and thousands of businesses that had no presence online, and now people can go and order and pay and do everything online from them. But the same thing has to be done in order to create that presence on the main street, that they will have the option of have some of their customers doing it online, but hopefully in a few weeks that they'll have the option to have some of people coming into the store as well. But we all know that it's going to take more time to clean, it's going to take more time to service each customer. So all this needs to be part of the solution, and we need to be in there supporting the small business through that. So I think it's clear and concise messaging and direction, and adapting and supporting the small business. While we manage this crisis, we need to think about the long term as well.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our question period for today, guys. Thank you very much for your time. You're all working crazy hours representing your constituents and keeping municipal government going in this unprecedented time. So on behalf of everyone who's watching tonight, thank you very much for all you're doing. And special thank you also to your staff, who I know are all supporting you through this very difficult time for all of us. So tonight we had a Deputy Mayor for the City of Toronto and City Councillor for Davenport, Anna Bailao. We had Christine Fonseca, Councillor for Ward 3, City of Mississauga, and Regional Councillor for the Region of Peel. We also had Councillor Martin Medeiros, for the Councillor for the Wards 3 and 4 in the City of Brampton, and also Regional Councillor for the Region of Peel. And we had His Worship Nelson Santos, Mayor of Kingsville, Ontario. Thank you very much to our panelists, and thank you for your time. Before we wrap up, I'd just like to thank our event sponsors. In particular, I'd like to thank MDC Media Group, Camões TV, and EZO Networks, as well as the Federation for putting on this event and this series, and our corporate sponsors for helping us out in that regard as well. Our next event in this series the topic is digital adoption through COVID-19 and beyond. Learn how businesses can gain a competitive advantage through digital transformation. And that'll be taking place on Tuesday, June 9th at 5 p.m. On Facebook Live, on YouTube, and also broadcast on Camões TV. Thank you very much, everyone. That concludes tonight's event. Boa sorte, muito obrigada. Boa noite, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.